Hi, I'd like to show you how to link SeedCode Calendar to a file you already have. This is a little different than pasting it into your file and goes much quicker. It's what we call the quick integration. So I've got this file called meetings that I got from New Starter Solution, and I've just put a couple of simple meetings in it. They have a title, a date, and a time, which is all we need to get something to show up on the calendar. So let's take SeedCode Calendar and point it at this meetings table. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put them in the same relative location. And then I can get rid of this. So this is where the files are going to be. They're going to be next to each other when they're hosted or served. So I want them to be next to each other when I'm working on them. Now I'll just open this up and take a look at the integration instructions. So those are over on home screen and documentation. And you can see this article here, integration, pasting the calendar into your file. Very cool, step-by-step instructions for that. But we're going to follow the quick integration in this video. It goes much quicker, and there's a little video that'll show you how to do it, which I'm recording right now. So I'm just going to open this in a browser, and it opens up off screen here for me, so that I can follow those step-by-step instructions while we get started. All right, so let's do it. So the first thing it tells me to do is back up my file, which I've done, and now it wants me to copy some field definitions from our sample events table. So if I go into the sample events table in the calendar, there are two fields that I need to copy. So I'm going to copy those because I have FileMaker Advanced. If you don't have FileMaker Advanced, you can manually recreate them, or get in touch with us and we'll show you how to, or we can do the little FileMaker Advanced part for you. Let's see, we'll paste them in, and then each one of them needs a little bit of editing. So you can see this asterisk and slash. That tells us that FileMaker didn't understand something in the calc and it's commented it out. So I'm going to remove those leading and trailing comments and put the parenthesis back, and then edit this calc. And really, I only have to edit the stuff above this line. And all it's saying is, hey, what's your start date? And in this file, it's called something called date. And we don't have a date end in this file, so I'm just going to use date again. And then our time start is here, and our time end is here, which is great. Make sure it stays a number, and click OK. And if you got your syntax right, it won't yell at you. That's great. And then let's do the same thing with this one. It's a little shorter. We'll copy out the leading comment and the trailing comment, and our date start is here, and our time start is here. Okay, so that's great. Next thing it wants us to do is add some auto-enter calcs to the start and end times. So if I go back to sample events, you can see that I have some start and end auto-enter calcs here, and I would add those to the calcs in the other file, the start and end times. But this is really just about supporting times that span midnight, and my meetings aren't going to span midnight. So for this video, I'm going to leave that off. The next thing it wants us to do is grab some of these fields here if we need them. The first two are about the Gantt chart, and we're not going to Gantt chart our meetings in this example. So I'm just going to grab these last two. This is used in email notifications, and this one is used in repeating events. So I'm just going to copy those, click cancel, come back to sample events, or excuse me, to meetings, and hit paste. So we're all done with field definitions, which is great. So now we need to do some work in the relationship graph, and this is what we think of as repointing table occurrences. So what I do is I go into the relationships graph and I say, what of these are represented in my meetings table? So my meetings don't have have contacts, projects, and phases linked to them. Other tables might, and the Gantt chart uses this stuff, but in this case I'm just going to delete this stuff and probably remove the Gantt chart from my calendar as well. Just going to link to sample events, or excuse me, just going to link to meetings. So our job here is to transform this from sample events to meetings, and here's how we do it. We double click here and create a new data source, and it's actually going to be my meetings file, which is pretty straightforward. And the meetings table is the one I want, but then I'm going to rename it so that it says exactly what it says down here, sample events. I can change this later, but this makes things a lot easier while you're following along. Sample events. Click OK, and now you can see the fields here are now the fields in our meetings table, which is great. And I want to edit this relationship to make sure that I'm using the primary key for the meetings table on the right-hand side. If it was the first created field, it might line up for you automatically like this one did. That happens to be my primary key. Otherwise, I would come in here and find the primary key and make sure I'm using it in both of these match pairs. So that looks okay, and we're done with the relationship graph. That's all we have to do on the relationship side. Again, I mentioned that I was going to probably delete the Gantt chart. This is pretty easy in our new calendar. Just double click here, grab this tab, go to Gantt, delete. Say OK. Kind of great. Takes a second to kind of catch up with you. Cool. Now it's gone. That's great. All right, so back into browse mode. So when we come into browse mode now, a bunch of stuff's probably going to yell at us because we haven't finished the integration. We're just going to say fine, we'll halt that script and we'll keep going here. So the next thing we want to do is the field mapping. And this is basically where we teach the calendar where your date, time, and everything else, all the fields we need to draw the calendar are. The way we do that is we go over to Calendar Developer to source number 1. And this is, you can see this layout is now pointed at sample events, which is now your meetings table. So all this stuff broke. So all we have to do here is go through and kind of reassign these to the relevant fields in your meetings table. So what's the ID? So let's grab the ID. Okay, that's the match field. That's great. And I'm going to switch this to view, show, turn sample data off so we can start seeing field names here. All right, what's the date start field? That's date. What do we want to use for the date end? Also date. Time start is start time. Time end is end time. Now these are the calcs that we brought in, that we copied. You can see here, you likely copied from sample events. So timestamp start, timestamp end down here. So the summary, this is kind of what we think of as when we, what's going to be the summary of the event on the calendar? What are we going to see? And we want to use this title over here. So let's grab title. We have some instructions for using calcs here and supporting multi-line events and everything, but for now we're just going to use the title. This is the nice thing, is when you're integrating this, you can kind of get it working with a simple field and then come back and start refining it. But seeing the calendar working is your first goal. All right, contacts, we don't have anything to map because we don't have contacts in this example. I would probably remove this field if I know I'm not going to use contacts just like that. Now resources is kind of interesting. We have this idea of location. I think I'm going to try and use that. I'm going to say that that's going to be our resource location. And then notified, I copied over, right? That's that field that we use for email notifications. Well, what do we want to color by? I don't really have a status over here yet. So I think I'm just going to try and use location again, which would be kind of cool. Repeating events, I copied that repeating ID over. Great. And then we're not using this stuff on the Gantt chart, so I'm just going to delete this whole tab. All right, so now we've finished the field mapping, which is pretty cool. So we can go into browse mode. And the next thing we have to do is change 2 other layouts. These are the layouts that actually show our event details. So if I go into layout mode and move over to event details, you'll see the same kind of breaking happened, right? So match field ID. I'm just going to put in a few things that we can see the calendar work. I would eventually transform this so it looks the way I want and maybe remove the contact and project buttons. But for now, let's just kind of see it working. So the summary we said is going to be the title. I'm not sure what the description is going to be. I'm not sure what this is going to be. Oh, the resource is going to be my location. The date, I think the status we were also using for location. We don't really have a status. I'm going to leave that alone. The date is our date, and end date I'll leave alone, and time start is our start time, and our end time. Again, you can come up and clean this up later, but for now we just kind of repoint these fields. You'd actually do the same thing on the event, sorry, not on the to-do list, on the event list, right? The same kind of thing where the fields for our sample events table are now pointing at a meetings table, and we need to repoint these fields. But I'm going to leave this alone for now. You'll come back here and clean this up once you're integrated. That's actually it, right? If we go back to the calendar and hit browse mode, it's going to bark at us again, I think. Oh, nope, it didn't. Put everything on the calendar, right? So we have 2 meetings, one at 8 a.m. and then another one at noon, and there they are, 8 a.m. and noon. That's how quick it is to link the calendar with your events. And if I click here, you can see I've got a lot of fields missing. I still need to clean this up, but it's pretty cool. So we can go a little further here and start doing some color coding, right? So let's change our manage value list. Let's change our resources. We have a value list here, and I'm just going to use a value list from another file. I'm going to say that, hey, in meetings, there's already a value list called location. So that's kind of cool. And then on settings, I'm going to change the colors to be our location. So what do we have? Just real quickly here, we have room 807. And what's the other one? Main hall. And let's call this one, I want to get that orange here, main hall. All right, and apply and close. So now we've color coded by location, which is pretty cool. And if we head over to schedule, and I still have to run the upon opening script again. This is something you have to do occasionally when you're making big changes. Now you can see that we've picked up the main hall and room 807 as resources. So we've actually gone kind of a long way towards integrating the calendar with this meetings application. Things yet to do are to clean up these layouts, get rid of some of these missing fields. So that's it. I hope you have the confidence to start linking calendars with files you already have and visualizing your events in the calendar. Thanks a lot.